32 years, people in the Lowcountry have turned to Tony Kolgaklis and GEICO for insurance. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down one-on-one with Tony, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and download my free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores.
Tony Kolgaklis, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, thank you greatly. It's an honor to sit down with you because obviously you are a big name in the insurance business here in town, and we see your ads on television. Even before I did my research last night, your ad pops up on the web.
Thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. And, obviously you work hard in the Lowcountry to help others. I know that you are a local GEICO insurance agent, and you serve the entire Lowcountry area. Your office obviously is located in North Charleston.
Correct.
And you wherever you live in Somerville, Monk's Corner, Walterboro, Goose Street, Mount Pleasant, West Ashley, or on one of the islands, obviously, you're there. And from my understanding, you have over 30 years of insurance experience.
That's right. This December will make 32 years. The only job I've had since college was as a GEICO agent.
Wow. What is the biggest difference between 32 years ago and right now when you think of insurance?
I've not pondered that question before, but that is a good question. Technology has certainly been the main change. Mm-hmm. And I think technology has allowed consumers to be more informed, better informed about their insurance purchases. I think technology has also helped us in the insurance business, both on the sales and on the claims service side, to be more efficient at what we're doing and better serve our clients. So
Right.
Technology would be the largest advantage or biggest advantage in the last 32 years.
What is the biggest disadvantage?
Technology. The reason I say that is so not technology so much as the internet.
Yeah.
It's still consumers are better informed today, I think, than what they have been in the last few decades. Unfortunately, insurance is still one of those services that you need, and you need an insurance professional to explain to you how an insurance policy works. A lot of people go on the internet, they use the little question mark, if there happens to be one on the page they're on, and they try to make informed decisions, and I don't blame them, but there are so many intricacies for insurance products and policies, procedures. It takes a licensed insurance professional to be able to adequately educate the consumer on what they should be purchasing to protect their investments and assets.
You talk about investment in assets. Obviously, we just survived Hurricane Dorian.
Yes.
What does that do for your business?
Well, so the insurance business is we're in the what we do is make people whole after a loss. So catastrophic losses in the insurance industry are obviously known. The insurance industry, the property and casualty insurance industry, which is my side, as opposed to life and health. In the P&C side, property and casualty side, the companies have reserves and allocations for catastrophic losses. So where one would think that a large storm comes in and it devastates an area and costs a lot of money, insures a lot of money,
Sure.
People sometimes think, well, my rate's going to go up. Well, that's really, there's really not a direct correlation to that, because the insurers already allocate and they're prepared for those type of situations.
What other situations are you dealing with now in the insurance business?
Flooding is probably the most common topic that I talk about nowadays. Over the last several years here in Charleston's always had its share of flooding issues, but over the last several years, we've seen areas flood that have never flooded before. And, a lot of that has to do with the weather, obviously, but what some people are not, haven't quite grasped yet, just because you live in a location that's not flooded before doesn't mean it won't flood now. And one of the reasons for that is the development. So if you have an established neighborhood that the topography has been established for 2 or 3 decades, and there's a developer that builds another neighborhood nearby, the watershed that was naturally taking care of itself from that established neighborhood, now that watershed is going to change because the elevation of another nearby subdivision or development could redirect that water, and you see streets and yards and homes flooding that haven't flooded before. So we, in my agency, we have a lot of conversations around flood insurance. It's very important. The good thing about flood insurance is it's relatively inexpensive. Some people would differ because if they live on one of the islands or directly on the beach or water, you're going to pay a little bit more, obviously. Right. But for consumers living, inland, flood insurance is really inexpensive. And nowadays, I recommend it to all of my clients.
Where should the discussion about flood insurance go next?
I think there is good discussion happening now in the legislature. It started and it stopped a couple of times. But there are a couple of acts, the Bigger Waters Act, for example, and I would like to cite the date, but I'd be remiss if I said it wrong. But there have been discussions about where flooding should go. So the National Flood Insurance Program, which does handle most of the flood insurance in our country, it's underfunded. Katrina was probably the most eye-opening experience. So the legislature has to get a hold of the funding and the pricing for the National Flood Insurance Program to make sure they do have adequate reserves to pay for catastrophic losses like we've seen in the past. So the remapping of areas, which has been going on, that's a really good step towards getting the evaluation to have the correct rate for the correct risk. So those houses that are not at higher risk, the premium should be lower. The ones that do have higher risk, obviously they should pay more. But the pricing is archaic. It's really not been evaluated until recent history. It's not been evaluated for a long time, to my knowledge.
What else are you evaluating when it comes to Charleston? Because we have a lot of people moving here every day now.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because we do have a lot of people moving in every day, and it's a blessing. Our little town is I think we're about to burst at the seams, but what we handle on a daily basis in my agency, unfortunately we are a very busy agency, is the consumer moving into Charleston, and they're new to maybe the city life, they're new to our state, and they come from a state where insurance laws and prices are different. Our state is unfortunately one of the ones that has a higher percentage of uninsured motorists driving on the road. That number has been as high as 23% to my knowledge. So our rates here tend to be a little higher than, say, Virginia or North Carolina. And so that's a question we deal with on a daily basis as well in the agency. So somebody's moved in, they call us for rates, and they're kind of shocked a little bit. So, but it's a conversation we have, and most of the time when you explain to consumers what we're facing here as far as the traffic and everything we live, you and I live every day. It's just a conversation we have to
have. Insurance laws. What are you concerned about most in the future?
In terms of the laws, I don't have, because it's regulated at the state level. Of course, there's a National Association of Insurance Commission, NAIC. The state level does most of the regulations for the insurers. We are very blessed here in South Carolina. I think we have a very good Department of Insurance. Our insurance commissioner, I think, has done a very good job. They've been very proactive during catastrophic losses. So from a legislative standpoint, I'm not very concerned about the direction we're headed in right now. Of course, with technology again, and I will go back to that, I think that the technology and the consumer's willingness to go on the internet and make their own informed decisions are going to result in misunderstandings, which as to how the insurance policy is going to work when a claim occurs. And those misunderstandings are going to lend themselves to lawsuits, and these probably would be, in my opinion, could be prevented if there was a licensed insurance professional involved in the purchasing process.
In the purchasing process, what is that like for the average person?
Confusing, I think. A lot of consumers, I think, I'll go back to what I said earlier. So many consumers today are much better informed, and the internet and technology has a lot to do with that. But that conversation, depending on the experience of an agent, sometimes that conversation is not as in depth. The older you get, these gray hairs remind me that I need to ask a few more questions today than what I may have when I first started out. But evaluating what a person needs to protect is a conversation. It's not merely checking off boxes on an application. You really should have a discussion with your insurance professional as to what is it you really are trying to protect. Are you just trying to, in auto insurance, are you just trying to satisfy the legal requirement of the state? Or do you have assets that could be exposed if you got into an accident that you were liable and you caused harm or death or disability to somebody? So the discussion, the conversation is very, very important, and it needs to be with a licensed insurance professional.
I know you talked earlier about technology as a good and a bad thing for the insurance company. What more questions do you have, Tony, after 32 years in this business?
I have questions about the future of the independent agent, which is what I am, and a lot of people don't know it. So GEICO is not an agency system or agency company. We were founded as a direct writer, which meant the consumer got the policy directly from the company. There's less than 200 people like me in the country. When I came on in 1983, there were only 83 of us in the field who own our own agencies. My biggest concern right now is what the future of the independent agent will be. I think that the consumers will always need us when it comes to your commercial insurance. I think life and health, depending on how the healthcare system changes, if it does. But I'm really concerned for the future generations of agents. Are they going to have a career? Is it going to be as robust as it is now? And as you know, I've got both my sons, and now I'm glad to say my nephew Alex has joined the family business. And I'm looking at these young men and trying to give them some guidance in the future as to is this a career you stay in? Will it be as valuable as this today? So those are my questions. I just don't know where we're going to be in another 10 years.
Wow. Why do people trust you?
My charm and personality, maybe. I don't know. I think I joke about the gray hair, but I think when you've been around for a while, just because I've got a lot of experience doesn't make me smart. But I have been around a while, and I've seen the good side and the bad side of this business. And there's nothing more rewarding than selling a client an insurance policy that you recommend to protect them adequately. And heaven forbid they do wind up in a situation where they need that policy, but it did what it was designed to do. It made them whole again. It protected their assets. So it's important for me to make sure that we do the right thing for the client. And moving forward, I hope my experience can teach my younger agents. And I think we try to do a good job with that. So there's a lot of education in my office, a lot of discussion about my experience that I try to impart on my younger agents so that we do take care of our clients.
You talk about education. Obviously, as I hear in your bio, you've worked closely with servicemen and women in all branches, including the airmen and sailors of the Joint Base Charleston, as well as the United States Coast Guard here in Charleston. You are the only civilian to be named an honorary chief master sergeant at the Joint Base Charleston. You're also a former honorary commander and member of the Chiefs Group in Top 3. Tony!
I have to say I'm very proud of everything you just read. I'm very proud of all that. And my history working with the military is because of GEICO. So GEICO stands for Government Employees Insurance Company. And when our field program was established somewhere around the 1960s, the offices like mine were situated near a base or a base or installation. We were near that gate because we were primarily servicing enlisted personnel as far as selling insurance.
Makes sense.
So the nature of my job was to be able to work with, or actually a requirement of my job was to work closely with the senior enlisted personnel on whatever installation I was assigned to or nearby. And I've been very blessed. I started my career in Kings Bay, Georgia, and I worked with the sailors down in NSB Kings Bay and the Marines there. I moved to Fort Rucker, Alabama, where I worked with the Army soldiers and rotary wing aviation, and then blessed to come to Charleston and get to deal with the Navy, the Coast Guard, and then ultimately the Air Force. My involvement with the Air Force was intricate. I was out there a lot. I was very fortunate. Senior enlisted advisor. Each one of them, as well as the commander of the base, had a liking for our participation. We did things like Sailor of the Quarter, Sailor of the Year. I was also honored to speak at the Airman Leadership graduation one year, which not many civilians get to do. But the honorary chief, that was a big deal.
Yes.
I was very fortunate at the time. The commander of the base was he's now General Finley, but Rusty Finley was here, and he and I were both inducted at the same time. And he and I are friends, and it was just good to have that experience with him.
Exactly right. Tony Kolgaklis, when you take off your insurance hats, who else are you?
Being, you talked about me being well known, and that, I have a wonderful advertising agency, and they help brand me along with the GEICO name.
Sure.
Who am I when I take my insurance hat off? I try to be anonymous. And it's not that I don't like people, but I tend to love to spend time with my family. I am an avid boater and sportsman, so I become somewhat of a recluse.
Yes.
But no, I love people. But in my downtime, I like to just spend it with the family and keep it as quiet as I possibly can.
That's how you do it. That's what I try to do.
Yeah.
I can't do it
Well,
now.
you know, I mean, you're more well known than I am.
Oh.
And it's when you go out to dinner and you're in and I love it.
Yes.
That's why that my advertising agency helped to brand me. But there's my downtime, and I value it very much.
Very much. You talked earlier about GEICO obviously helping with the government agencies and whatnot. What does GEICO really means to you?
My life. I come from a large family of GEICO agents. At one point, so my father started the agency in St. Mary's, Georgia in 1987. I literally graduated on December 14th, 1987, and December 16th, I was in his office, and I never stopped. He worked until about 1996 when my sister took over his office. I'd already moved to Alabama. But at one time, my brother's sister, sister-in-law, my wife, both my sons, my father, and my mother have all been licensed agents for GEICO. So I joke that I bleed GEICO blue. It's my whole life.
My whole life. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Tony Kolgaklis, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much, Quintin. It's a pleasure.
Likewise. Yeah, thank you.